now, please welcome your host, Kim Crable.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coffee. Isn't it good to be back? There's just such a feeling with us, isn't it? Over the last few weeks and months, gosh, what God has done with our audience, and I hope that our at home, I hope you're feeling the same way. I hope that you remember when we first started this, I said, I want this to feel like home to you. I want it to be something that you just can't wait to get to, and I hope that that's happening because we need one another. We need to share our stories and to really have this connection. So thank you so much for joining me, and thank you all so much for joining me. Well, we have another great show today, and it's going to start with COVID-19. Do you remember? Do you remember COVID-19? We all remember it, don't we? It first appeared in late 2019, and it quickly escalated into a global pandemic. The virus spread primarily through respiratory droplets, affecting millions worldwide. By early 2023, there were over 760 million confirmed cases and more than 6.9 million deaths. The pandemic put immense pressure on healthcare systems and changed how we live, work, and interact with one another. It's clear that COVID-19 reshaped our approach to health, safety, and daily life. Wouldn't you agree? Yes. But think about it. Just think about it for just a minute. Throughout history, including the Bible, we know that God works during devastating times. I often think of Jeremiah, who grieved while walking through the ruins of Jerusalem, yet he still saw God in the midst of the destruction. Many might say that very same thing about the initial devastating COVID season, that while you experienced grief during this very challenging time, that you also saw God at work. We're still hearing stories more and more about the many individuals who faced grief and personal challenges during the devastation of COVID, but who also discovered great hope. Today, I am thrilled to introduce such a story. When we return from this very short break, we will meet a strong, strapping 10th degree black belt who during the pandemic experienced a simple yet transformative moment that changed the course of his life. Grab your coffee, my friends, and call your friends. No one wants to miss the inspiring story of resilience and transformation that we're about to share. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coffee. Well, my goodness, who's even heard of a 10th degree black belt? I don't even know what that is, but we have one with us today. And not only that, let me tell you a little bit more about our guest. He has won 3 U.S. karate championships and retired as the #1 middleweight kickboxing contender in the world. Oh, my goodness. He has used all of this creation to build a worldwide association for the professional kickboxing team. I don't even know how. I cannot wait to meet him, but here's what I'm so interested in. With all this strength, he talks about a single wink that changed his entire life during the COVID. I can't wait to hear it, so let's welcome Joe Corley. Come on out. Hi there. So good to meet you. Absolutely. Come on in, have a seat. Thank you. 10th degree. What does that mean? How do you do that? And can you show me some moves?
I can show you moves, yes.
I bet.
10th degree black belt is, best way to say it is, we call it in the martial arts, we call it the Grand Master rank. So the first 3 ranks are like your warrior ranks, then you go into your teacher degrees, 4th and 5th, and then you're like a professor at 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then 9th degree, you really become like a PhD in the martial arts, and 10th degree, you're called Grand Master. But our whole frame about that is the certificate reads the humility of a Grand Master, because Grand Masters have reached that point where they know how much they don't know. Oh. And so the certificate has a quote from Stephen Covey that says, humility is the mother of all virtues. And he says, courage is the father, and wisdom is the child, and integrity is the grandchild. So that's the way we look at it.
Absolutely beautiful. Well, congratulations on all this. I think you started when you were about 16.
That's right, 16 years old. I was going to Georgia Military Academy at the time, and my dad had taught me to box when I was 6 years old. He gave me a baseball glove and a ball and boxing gloves, and he was career Army, and he would come home from a deployment, and my mom would have me wearing white shoes. He would throw those away and give me brown shoes. So he wanted me to be a guy's guy. In his high school, he grew up in Birmingham. In his high school, they had a boxing ring there, and when boys had problems with each other, the coaches would come out and throw 4 gloves in the ring and say, you kids work it out. And so that's the way he kind of raised me, was to, he said, you know, when we show up on some of these Army bases, like we ended up in Linz, Austria, and then Würzburg, Germany, he said, you're going to have some big kids come up and try to welcome you to the neighborhood, and you're going to have to deal with it right away, and then they're going to want to be your friends. So that's kind of that was kind of the structure that he rolled me in the Georgia Military Academy in the 1st grade. Then we went overseas 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and I was back there 5th grade through the 12th, and we lost him to lung cancer at age 10, when I was 10, and he was only 43 at the time. But that's what I took away from that relationship. So that's what attracted me to martial arts, and as soon as I started doing it, I really felt like I had found a home.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love the story because I think of someone being so strong and powerful and disciplined and in control, as you are. You're trained through this, but yet during COVID, you said there was a wink that changed your life, but it wasn't just any wink, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, the author of the God Wink series is a man named Squire Rushnell. He was a former vice president of programming for ABC's children's programming. And I had read the book about 5 years ago, and now I listen to the Audible version of it often. And so I read God Winks, and so when I was I got the shot on a Friday. I got COVID on Monday, and by Wednesday I was really feeling terrible. You know, when you go in the doctor's office and they say, are you pregnant or do you plan to be? And then they say, have you had asthma? I say, no. But as it turns out, COVID realized that I had had asthma when I was a kid, so it went right to my lungs. So when I went into the North Fulton Hospital there, I was seeing animals and things on the walls. I was seeing TV screens and all kinds of crazy things. And I never had a respirator, but they gave me oxygen because my oxygen was really low. And then about the 9th day I was in there, in the middle of the night, I woke up and I just felt this epiphany, like, you know, in the martial arts, I've had a pretty long run, so to speak, and so I got these thousands of well wishes from around the world and Facebook and, you know, so on, and I just felt this epiphany, you know, and I woke up and said, I think I'm well, you know, so I'm ready to leave here. So 2 days later I left. Then do you want me to finish telling how that happened?
Yes.
So I go home from the hospital, I walk into my bedroom, and on the dresser I see a Bible. And I said, boy, I don't remember this being there. I opened it, and it was from a friend of mine who had given it to me in 1987. And Ben Kiker's his name. He lives in LJ, and very big in the Baptist church there in LJ. And so I said, that's interesting. But in 1987, he said, you know, you can either follow the word or you can, you know, do otherwise. And I said, well, why is this Bible sitting here? Phone rings the next day. It's Ben Kiker. He says, Joe, we're really glad you made it. We were praying for you, and you made it. That's good. He said, and see, every time I would see Ben for years, he'd say, Joe, are you ready to be baptized? I know I was baptized as a kid, so I would just, you know, I would stiff arm him, push it off. So he says, we're really glad you made it. Are you ready to be baptized? I said, I think I am. He said, there was a hesitation on the other end. He said, wow, he's ready. So I said, I'm ready. He said, well, I'll come down and meet with you. And I said, I'll come up and see you. And then in the meantime, I had, in the last couple of years, I've been going to Andy Stanley's North Point Church. And so he said, we can arrange for you to be baptized. I said, well, why don't I check with the church? So they said, well, we could do it in about 6 weeks. And so I went up and I met with him and LJ, and we talked about the process. He had some things that he wanted me to go through. Yes questions, no questions, and so I went through them, and so now we're set 4 weeks from then, I think, to do the baptism at the church. So I'm driving home from LJ, and I get a call. It's a friend of mine in Las Vegas, and he says, Joe, you know how you're always talking about God winks? And I said, yes. He said, well, I've got the author of the book on the phone with me, and I think you guys should speak. And I literally did this to the phone. I said, how could that be? So his whole book on God winks is these are not coincidences. These are things that, where God is speaking to us. So we talked for about 10 minutes, and I was ignorant about all of his other work. I said, you really should be doing video. He says, well, we're on the Hallmark Channel. We've got all these things. He said, in fact, we got a new one coming out in this coming February where we're going to see God winks through the eyes of the family dog. And so I've got to go and see all those still. But anyway, that was it. And I did the baptism there at the church, and I've really felt a huge new presence in my life.
And I'm sure they were going through those questions to make sure that you had surrendered your life to the Lord and that you had made all those commitments prior to. So what a great story, don't you all think? And I love that. Let me ask you, how has that changed your life?
Subtle changes. One of the things that Squire Rushnell mentions in his book is that once you become aware of God winks, you start seeing more of them. But now they're just nonstop. I mean, they're just nonstop. So 5-6 times a day, I'll say to someone, that's a God wink, that's a God wink. So what it's saying to me is that perhaps I'm worth hanging with, Our Creator is saying to me, I'm worth hanging with, and keeps sending me messages. With my wife and daughter, I am, I think, more, how would Jordan Peterson say it? I'm more understanding, I guess, and trying to be more
present.
Present, yes, and not expecting everything to just change automatically. So more patient, I guess, would be the way to say it. And in my work environment, when I see people doing things that are either unethical or dishonest or otherwise, I don't take it personally from them. I think I'm more forgiving, if you will. So those would be the most direct impact, I think, for now.
Absolutely. You talked about seeing more God winks once you experience the other. Do your God winks direct you? I mean, do you see things that, because I hear so many people talking about God winks and it helps direct them. Is that something that you would say that is a part of your life?
The God winks that I get, I think, are more, they're more designed to make me wonder why they happened as opposed to telling me why they happened. So it's almost like, in martial arts you have a KON, right? A KOAN, where the instructor gives you a story and then you're supposed to figure out something from the story. So, and I'll actually look at someone and say, I wonder why we just both ended up here at this moment at the same time, and so on. So I think the way Squire Rushnell says it, he says over time as you put them all together, you start seeing, he says, like a puzzle, you know, and here's this piece. Well, it's got a shape to it, but I can't tell where else it goes. So I think I'm being directed in pieces, like a puzzle.
Well, and I'll tell you what I think is most exciting about it is you're seeing God in places, right? We're seeing Him, and He's becoming more real and more alive. And to me, that's the most important thing about it all, is that you're seeing God in your daily life, and He's always made Himself present to us, but we're now paying attention through a wink. A God wink, not just any wink.
That's right.
We're going to take a break. When we get back, would you be willing to maybe take a few questions from our audience?
I'd love to.
And if you would like to show us a move.
Absolutely.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coffee. Well, Joe was so gracious to say that he would answer a question or two. So you have a question. What's your name and what's your question?
Okay. Hi, Joe. My name is Debbie. I've enjoyed hearing your story. My question is, could you just share with us maybe what is the most magnificent God wink that you have seen, and maybe what you have learned or what you've learned from it?
Great question.
The most magnificent God wink. Well, actually the most magnificent one I've seen is the one that I just talked about, where the author of the book was on the phone with me. But once that happened, I started seeing more God winks coming more rapidly, and I think the idea that they are coming more rapidly is that I'm supposed to see the big picture at some point, and I can't wait to see it all together. But there's so many of the ones that were people who don't seem to be connected in any way, are connected in ways that create results that we otherwise wouldn't expect. I'll have another one that comes to mind soon.
Yeah, if you do, let us know.
Yeah.
Do you ever see people and you think, oh, they just had a God wink, and they don't even understand that? Do you ever see that happening?
All the time, yeah.
Do you?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Tell us about that.
They just think they're really coincidences, and our ability to read into all of them is limited by our humanness, I guess. But I'll have to point it out for my daughter all the time. You know, she graduated from Kennesaw. She, not to discuss politics, but I raised her relatively on a conservative slant, and then she ended up being hired by a group that was kind of what politicians would call rhino-like, but she was really attracted to this group called Turning Point. And then one day, someone invites her to a meeting. The next day, they hire her for Turning Point. So I say to her, those are God winks.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Let me ask you this: just the process of what happened to you during COVID, being in the hospital, feeling well, coming out, finding that Bible that had been laying there for how many years. That just speaks to me about how important it is to not give up on other people. Even though it may not be instantaneous, the result, we're planting seeds. How did you feel about that? Did you talk to the fella that, it's just like, this Bible's been laying here all along?
I did. First thing I did is I thanked him for not giving up on me, you know, because that was 1987 to 2021. So what are we talking about? Again, I like to talk in decades. So what was that, like 3.7 decades or 3.4 decades? And he would always follow through like that. And then I think that tied together with the healing that I felt in the COVID, and then with the Squire Rushnell call. yeah, it was really insightful.
Absolutely. And why had that Bible just laid there for so long? Was there just not an interest? Is it just something you just didn't think about?
No, I had probably half a dozen Bibles in my house. And when I saw that one, I didn't realize that I ever had it. So, and why it was on my dresser, you know, I'm certain it wasn't there for even a month, so I don't know how it got there. So that was a mystery to me, but part of the mysterious part of the God wink.
How do you help people see God winks? Like, I mean, like in your work, in your business, do you try to help them see that? Is that a part of what God has called you to do?
If I'm honest, I'm not sure yet what God has called me to do. One of the things that I think He's called me to do is this. You know, a good friend of mine is Chuck Norris, and Chuck Norris is a man who's a very conservative and very Christian person, and he has a program called Kickstart Kids. And for 4 decades down in Texas, he has funded Kickstart Kids, and he's sent kids from underprivileged areas off to Yale and Harvard and you name it over the years. So Chuck has just turned 84, this is the answer to the God wink question. So in 1997, a friend of mine, Joel Levy, who made black belt with us, he was the head of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. He brought a guest with him to our Battle of Atlanta karate tournament. The guest says, "Hi, Joe, I'm Dan Cathy. You won't remember me, but I was in your karate class when I was 8 years old." And fast forward to have a guy named John Paul DeGioia, who became the chairman of the John Paul Mitchell Company. He was homeless when he was 19 in L.A., and Chuck Norris let him train free in his karate school out there. And so John Paul then sponsored these karate teams and got the karate teams to go all over the world with kids in it. So the vision that has been given to me in this God wink was have a meeting that would have John Paul DeGioia, Chuck Norris, Dan Cathy, and Dr. Ben Carson all in the same room, and we would be talking about how we would take the Kickstart Kids program and spread it all over the United States to help give back to our boys growing up who used to do something called PE, you know, and have them actually earn their black belts in school. So by the time they're 10 years old, have their first degree black belt. By the time they're out of middle school, have their second degree black belt, and so on. To give them something to take them out into this country to have the kind of the warrior mindset, if you will, that would go along with everything else that we have to offer from America. So that's the I've just said that's the puzzle as I've seen it come together.
Wow, what a thought that could happen. Ben Carson helped my son. My son's in medicine, and Ben Carson actually allowed my son to do some work for him, which was really awesome. Gosh, what a vision that you have before you. So that's something you're going to dive into and make happen. Yeah.
I've talked to Chuck's wife about it. I've laid the groundwork for all of it. I haven't been able to share it with Dan Cathy yet, but I have shared it indirectly with John Paul DeGioia. So I think within the next 12 months or so, I should be able to get everybody in the room.
That is amazing. You know, one of the things that I think that I want to point out is when you talk about the warrior mindset, truly being in martial arts, doesn't that bring, and you mentioned this before a little bit, humility, so people don't go out ready to, hi-yah, or whatever it is you're supposed to do. But doesn't it bring more like an inner peace of like, I know I can, you're not looking for trouble. Right? Explain that better, because I'm really slaughtering it. But it brings a humility and someone who doesn't want to engage in a battle, right?
You know, I was saying several of your people here earlier that I believe Jordan Peterson is the smartest man in the world right now. And, you know, his current speaking engagement is how we wrestle with God. That's what he's speaking about around the country. He says that you're only showing courage when you have the ability to do something to harm someone, but you don't do it.
Yes.
And in that case, you're showing, not courage, he says you're showing, what's his word? You're showing patience, you're showing...
I thought it was courage, because that's a...
Yeah, well, you've got the courage. You got the courage to do this thing, and I don't know whether it's not a big word that escapes me, but it's you can forgive for put up with is a synonym of it, of things that people do. Only if you have the courage to squash them, but you don't try to overpower them. You don't try to you're not overbearing with them, but you're letting it happen. So you're magnanimous, I guess.
And what a beautiful way to represent Jesus in the world. Our time is up, Joe. I just want to thank you so much for sharing your dreams, for sharing your vision, and so thankful that you saw that God wink and that it just literally turned your life around. If we can ever be any help, we would love to. Thank you so much. And audience, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Go this week and find your God wink. Goodbye, everybody.